Hi, I'm Jason Edwards and welcome to Watch Your Six. We've had a lot of good feedback about our program and we're really excited about it. We had a lot of good information come from individuals and listeners and viewers, and they've really enjoyed the way we address these things, the way we simplify things. And the most important aspect is making things that are actionable. So today we're going to talk about a scenario that we see happening a lot. Picture this. You're in your workplace, you start to get a little bit more bonuses, maybe a little bit more raises, and there's more revenue coming in. And what naturally happens, you may find yourself going out to eat a little bit more, or you may find yourself buying nicer things. Or when you book a trip, let's say it's a cruise, you may upgrade to a better cabin. And then what you notice is there actually ends up being less money in your savings or less money in your checking account. Now we refer to this as lifestyle inflation, or some call it lifestyle creep. That means the propensity or the tendency to spend more money than we really make, and as we make more money, we spend more money. Interesting statistic from 2022 to 2023, the average consumer's income level went up about 5.9%, which wasn't bad. But only 50+% of them actually had money that was put to the side for savings. So that highlights the deficiency that comes from what we call inflationary or lifestyle creep. And we want to address it because it's a real concern. And it's almost become an American methodology. I make $200,000, I spend $300,000. I make $300,000, I spend $500,000. And what ends up happening is our discretionary capabilities or our abilities to deal with financial distress, i.e. a savings account, become less and less and less. So we find ourselves in a really weird dynamic. We actually make more money but have less money. So today we're going to talk about 8 specific things that can really help you build or address what we call lifestyle inflation or lifestyle creep. Now the first is set clear financial goals. We talk about this constantly. If you don't set a goal, you will go nowhere. If you're in your car right now and you're driving somewhere, or you're at the gym, or you're at work, without a goal, you're just going to sit there wondering what to do next. Same with financial goals. So there are some consistent questions that we have people ask themselves when it comes to financial goals. But before we start talking about saving money, before we start accumulating wealth, we have to have an objective, right? So ask yourself, do I really want to retire early? Is that a goal? Do I want to travel maybe while I'm young and can enjoy myself? Is that a goal? Do I want to save money for a house? Do I want to save money to pay for the kids' education? See, when you create those goals, they help ground you. And that grounding is critical because if you have that drive in front of you, you're going to push through it. Imagine again an individual running a marathon but having no end. Just running with no end. Without an end to the marathon, there really is nothing to push them forward. Same when it comes to finances. So to help mitigate lifestyle creep, we want to make sure that we have goals. We have to have something that we're focusing on. Now another thing you do once of course you create that goal is you create what we call a budget. Now a budget's a broad spectrum, a broad discussion, and people sort of look at it like, oh, it's like a diet. I'll be stuck on this. I'll have to do this forever. No, we're just talking about creating some kind of framework. So if my goal is I want a certain amount of money to buy a house, or my goal is I want to have money every year to travel, that should be worked into your budget. And now what happens is you start to look at things from a standpoint, do I need it versus do I want it? And also having some kind of record keeping, saying, okay, I'm making $4,000 a month. I only want to spend $2,000 a month. And you're writing down every Starbucks trip, or you're keeping track of your credit card spend, or you're looking at what you bought that TV on Amazon during the sale day. You start to look at things differently. And that is going to really help you start to compile a very effective way to minimize the lifestyle creep or lifestyle inflation. Because remember, lifestyle inflation is self-inflicted. It's not the cost of goods going up. It's you spending more money because you're making more money. Now, another thing to look at when you have the budget and you've got the goals, so you've got those 2 parts there, is what we call mindful spending. Look at spending from the perspective of, does it fit my goal and does it fit into my budget? So there's a lot of self-reflecting questions you can ask yourself. For example, is this a want or a need? That's a big deal. Am I only buying this to gain external gratification? For example, do I want to show people on social media, look, I've got this great new car. Those are some of the things. Do I actually want to buy this, or am I just buying it because it's on sale? That's another motivator. So looking at the mindful component. One exercise I tell people when they're thinking about a bigger purchase or they have a propensity to spend a lot of money is maybe take a week furlough. So I want to buy this item. I'm going to restrict myself for an entire week before I buy the item. So at the end of the week, I'll make that determination. That takes a lot of the impulse aspects of buying. Remember, in today's world, it's very simple to hit buy now button, right? You've got your credit card linked to your phone. You just click on it, it's done. And that's the way they want it in the retail sector. 70% of the US economy is driven by consumer spending. So if there's that much revenue coming in, you know that they're going to set up a system that is going to be simplistic and easier. So consider that, consider looking at it from that perspective. Another good thing is look at maybe selling some of the older clothes, older furniture that you don't have. Keep that grouping of clutter to a minimum. Does two things. One, it keeps things more concise. You can see how many shoes you have, etc. But it also allows you to maybe get some revenue back from the spending you've done in the past. Helps mitigate some of that. So those are another really, really good key component, and that's really our step 3. Now, to determine your financial objectives, you want to determine what your financial focus is, right? So for example, when you go to buy something, you want to look at it, is it worth it to you personally? So if my goal was I want to buy a home in 4 years, is buying this suit online or is going on this expensive trip worth that commitment, because that's going to put off my goal? You see, my goal should be in the front, right? So I'm looking at, I want to buy this house, the $300 I'm spending here, the $500 I'm spending there, or whatever I'm spending, does that cut into that goal? See, there's a key component versus need versus want, right? Do we need it or do we want it? And those are two different dynamics that you have to really address. And you want to make this personal. So when we meet with clients, a lot of times it's very uncomfortable initially because we're looking at analytically. We're not involved. It's not, I don't live in your house. I'm not involved or attached to what things you want to do. So I look at black and white and say, well, I've got a certain amount of revenue coming in. I've got a certain amount of fixed costs going out. Where's the extra money going? And that's where we'll find the extra discretionary spending or the impacts of lifestyle inflation. So those are other things that you want to look at. One main component to help mitigate that, and remember going back to the plan and the goals, is ensuring that you have an emergency fund. If you're increasing your revenue, if you're making more money every year, but when you look at your savings account, you only got 2 or 3 months of savings, there's a problem. That should be a red flag to you that there's something wrong. So ensure that if you are increasing your income, if you're getting those bonuses, that you're earmarking at least 6 months to 8 months of those funds to your emergency fund. So again, I want to reiterate, look at what your monthly expenses are, calculate that by 6 to 8 months, and make sure that that amount of money is sitting in an emergency account, a savings account, not touched, not invested. It's almost like the last bullet in the chamber, dusty drawer, sort of sitting there with money in it. And that's the resource you pull out if, God forbid, something were to happen to your revenue stream or your employment or the business you created. And that goes to anyone. I don't care if you're multimillionaire or individual that's in moderate middle class, there needs to be an emergency fund. There needs to be a fallback plan. Unfortunately, what happens with a lot of wealthy people as they become more wealthy, they also become more leveraged. Therefore, they create more debt because they feel, well, I'm getting $1 million a month. I don't really have to worry about keeping an emergency fund. I make so much. That's not true. Remember, debt can always rear its ugly head and impact your overall wealth. So that leads us to point number 5 or point number 6, prioritize paying your debt. So paying off our debt does 2 things. One, it reduces the expense associated with that debt, which is obviously cutting into your bottom line, but it also helps you realize the emotional and financial burden associated with your spending. We can't tell you how many times clients come into us and say, you know, I just got some money in, I want to pay off all my credit card debt, and then I want to start investing. Well, I sit back and I say to them, that's great, we should do that. But how did you get the credit card debt to begin with? You see, if I just pay off the credit card debt, but I don't change your thinking, I don't change the way you spend, I don't change the way you save, we're going to be right back at the credit card debt because it's a systemic flaw of the way you look at money, the way you look at investing, the way you look at accumulation. And those are things that have to be addressed before you can do anything correctly. Again, we like to use a lot of illustrations. It's like walking before you run. If someone comes up and say, listen, my ankle's sprained, but I want to run a marathon, I'm going to run it tomorrow. I'm going to say, well, let's get the ankle fixed first. Then look at the more aggressive approach. So prioritizing your debt is probably the most important thing we look at a lot of time. But it really comes back to the psychological aspect of how we think, how we view these things, how we look at the scenarios so that we're mitigating those. Now, another great tool that we use a lot is called automatic savings and investing. What does that mean? Well, when it comes to automatic savings and investing, one of the reasons things like a 401k or simple IRA or your retirement accounts work, and you'll find this, you've worked for 15 years, every year at the end of the year you had very little money, and then all of a sudden you'll notice that at the end of every year you had very little money in your checking account or your savings account, but all of a sudden your 401k's got 10 grand in it, 20 grand in it. Why is that? Well, because that money's coming out of your checking account automatically. See, it's an automatic deduction. You don't notice it, you don't feel it, there's no discipline involved, and that is a great way to start to accumulate wealth. So we say employ the same strategy when it comes to what we're talking about, mitigating lifestyle creep. If I'm putting away a certain amount of money automated via my checking account, let's say an EFT or an ACH, and that information is getting contributed to my other accounts, those resources are automatically coming out of my account, right? So that is something I don't have to think. It's almost like a fire and forget it scenario. And that's beautiful because that mitigates and protects you from you. And like I tell clients all the time, what you'll find with this strategy is you'll be as broke as you feel now. So at the end of every week, you feel like, man, there's no money in my paycheck. But because you paid yourself first, you actually start to build wealth. That's critical. So the automated savings is a great strategy. Slow, steady approach. Maybe start with a couple $100 a month, couple $1,000 a month, couple whatever your financial budget allows, but set it up where it goes into different accounts and those resources are put away. And that sort of leaves us to our number 8, regular check-ins. So there is a rule called the 50-30-20 rule that should be a rule that you apply to when it comes to building these strategies. And what it says is 50% of your earnings should go to your bills, your needed bills. That's your house, your car note, etc., etc. 30% can go to discretionary resources, like I want to go out to eat, maybe a trip. 20% goes to savings and investments. So if you took every dollar coming in and you break it up that way, you'll know and you'll see how quickly you can start to successfully minimize. So if I get a bonus raise and I say, hey, I got this raise, I'm going to buy a big house. Hey, I've got this raise, I want to go on a trip. Well, you may rear things back a little bit. You may say, hang on, let's calm down. Let's take the 50-30-20 split, and 50% of this is going to go towards my bills. 30% is all I really have to spend on going on a trip, go out to eat. What's that number look like? Now, what that's going to do is that's going to create a budget for you to now plan. Now, what type of trip can you go on? How big of a car will you purchase? If you do that, you're going to see a dramatic change in your cash flow. Remember, our job is to watch your 6. So we're watching the things that you're not aware of. And one of the big ways to become financially insolvent is to create wealth. I know it sounds bizarre, but you can see that with individuals, for example, that win the lottery. You're talking introductions of trillions and billions of dollars, and many of them after a very short window are what? Bankrupt. So was it the wealth that caused the bankruptcy? Or was it the philosophies, the tools, the strategies, the techniques that they used that caused the bankruptcy? See, those key components are things that we want to look at. Now, we hope that if you deploy some of these tactics, the 8 that we listed, you will see the beauty of enjoying your success while minimizing your risk, minimizing the financial impact to you, and mitigating some of those issues. And that's the key component. Success is a wonderful tool. And if success is applied properly, it creates all kinds of opportunity. But, it doesn't mean we have to buy the biggest car. Doesn't mean we have to have multiple houses. Doesn't mean we have to go on the biggest jet. It just means having the financial peace and security to do the things that are important. So in some cases, we'll tell clients, maybe downsize. You had a 5-6 bedroom house. You have this wonderful penthouse that's worth millions of dollars. But how many people live in it? If there's 2 people living in it, what's the benefit to you? Would you prefer maybe having that cash on hand so that you can travel more? Or maybe you want to give away more to philanthropic groups. See, those are all the components. Sometimes in our world, we have a tendency to, quantify how successful we are by what we have. But it's also a level of how much we have as it relates to protection, liquidity, and less stress. See, if I have, millions and millions of dollars, but I have a small house, but I have no bills, have the ability to go on a trip wherever I want or help individuals, is that more successful than a person who has this beautiful mansion, 3 Ferraris, but 80% of his assets are basically tied up in debt. Well, on paper, that might not look as attractive. So again, we recommend and we really want to encourage you to look at these tools to help you with what we call lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation is not an inflation that's generated by the economy. See, it's a self-inflicted wound. It's something that we do to ourselves. And we may blame it on inflation, but if I'm buying a Toyota and 3 months later I want to buy a Mercedes, that inflation jump wasn't because the Toyota cost more, it's because I changed brands. I changed fields, right? So those are the kind of things that we want you to look at. We hopefully in future episodes we'll be able to help you a little bit further on that. But today we want you to focus on lifestyle inflation and lifestyle creep. All right, so we're going to go to Grady, our producer, and he's got some DMs for us from previous call-ins.
What are impulsive red flags to avoid when it comes to individual spending?
So impulsive red flags are great. For example, you spend a lot of time on social media, go to online buying sites, and they have your account information there loaded, and they've got a rewards program, and you look at the rewards, and you've got lots of rewards. That means you're buying a lot of items. Also, for example, let's say you own 5 pairs of the same shoe, 6 pairs of the same suit. Maybe you have a good car, but you want a better car. These are all things you have to think about because what's happening is the buying has become an emotional resource. We call it instant gratification. You feel better. And if you don't think that works, ask yourself how entities, for example, Amazon, instead of having 1 Prime Day, now have 4 Prime Days. So they want impulsive buying work. So those are the flags I would be looking for.
Jason, I got a buddy who loves his Costco membership. He goes to Costco all the time, and something that he says is very integral to his bills and his groceries and stuff. But what do you tell someone who just keeps going to Costco and spending money? Not necessarily online, but just does the same thing with some of these membership places like Costco or BJ's.
Again, if you're using the 50-30-20 rule as a baseline, so let's say every dollar I've taken this out and 50%'s here. I've got 30% earmarked for purchases, and I go out to buy, and that's kind of what we call discretionary spending, and 20% for savings. I don't have a problem with that. The problem is if you continue to buy and you go outside the 30. So now when you look at every dollar coming in, 40% is going to Costco, 60% is going to Costco. There's an issue. Second issue is, again, clutter. I mean, that's a good indication to you. If you've got 75 pairs of the same thing, or you've got good resources and you're simply upgrading because something else, for example, TVs are really notorious for that. People have a 60-inch, a 70-inch TV. They love it. It's great. It's in good shape. An 87 comes out, they buy that. But they don't get rid of the 60 or 70. So now they have 8 TVs in their house. That's an indication there might be a problem.
He says, I make good money, but I have a ton of free time. What do you think about getting a second job just for the extra spending money?
That is always the double-edged sword with free time. If you make good money or good resources, but you got a lot of time, you have a propensity to go on what we call the black box, right? And you start looking at your phone, your computer. That can be a challenge. If you're talking about investing in a new business or starting a new business, and you've got the free time, you want to do your due diligence. One of the main important things when I talk to individuals, especially entrepreneurs, is did you do a pro forma? Did you create an actual blueprint for how the company will evolve? What type of revenue you're looking at? Starting a business sounds great in its infancy, but becomes very laborious and then becomes a headache and a financial drain. And here's the problem. You may have extra revenue coming in right now, but you start a business with the improper plan, that money will dry up quickly. So I would always recommend do all your research before you trigger it. Simply because you have free time is not a reason to start a business.
How many bank accounts should I have? I currently have, looks like 3 checking accounts, 4 credit cards, and a high yield savings account.
Many people use what they call the envelope strategy. They open up these accounts, checking and savings, and each one has a designated. So $1 goes here for my, the pool cleaner, $2 goes here for eating out. I don't personally like the envelope strategy because it makes it challenging for you to manage. There are usually fees associated with all those accounts, so that's also nibbling at your money. I like the KISS, keep it super simple. So I always recommend if you don't have a small business and it's just a personal dynamic, just have 1 checking account, 1 savings. Have an auto draft from your checking to your savings to make sure, like we talked earlier in the episode, get that automated contribution going in so that savings builds wealth, and then you get that 6-month window, you can turn that feature off. If you have a business, then maybe you have a personal checking, a business checking, personal savings, and a business savings. But having more than that becomes too arduous, and it becomes challenging trying to keep track. And the other problem is it also creates false hope. You're thinking, man, I've got these money in all these great accounts, and really you've just diluted your dollars. So I think those are really good questions. We look forward to more questions on our DMs. Please email us, go to our website, go to the podcast. Feel free to send those messages, make comments on our podcast posts on YouTube, and we'll try to get those into upcoming episodes. We thank you for tuning in once again. We look forward to seeing you next week here at Watch Your Six. I'm Jason Edwards, and have a great day.